Your Creative Push, episode 216.
Even if you just have to get in the shallow end of your goals and then kind of wade slowly to the deep end where all the scary stuff is, it'll be worth it.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngmin Brown, and my guest today is Lana Crooks. Lana loves the antique, the creepy, the cute, and the mysterious. Constructing creatures from fabrics and found objects, she is the purveyor of faux specimens and soft curiosities that are a blend of science and fantasy. Sought after for her pattern-making abilities, she frequently teams up with other artists to breathe three-dimensional life into their illustrations, earning her 2 Designer Toy Awards. Lana, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ah, of course, it's a pleasure. So
Thanks for dragging me back into society.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be a part of society sometimes.
Kicking and screaming.
Before we get into kind of all the stuff you do, I was wondering, could you give us kind of a brief, artistic bio, how you got to the point you are today?
My origin story?
The origin story.
Yeah, sure. My origin story is a little bit convoluted, a little here and there. I didn't take one direct path from childhood to skeleton making. Mm-hmm. I actually went to school as an illustrator. So I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design for illustration because as a kid, I just wanted to illustrate books and have a good excuse to read. So doing illustration in school, I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be my path. Once you're in college for something, you must do this for the rest of your life, which is not true at all.
Right.
Once I was out of school and trying to do freelance illustration for a living, moving to Chicago, trying to get kind of freelance jobs that I thought would be interesting, it just all kind of fell apart. I decided that being an illustrator wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy painting with deadline. I just didn't enjoy being pressured to work on something very specific. And being friends with amazing illustrators, you look at everything they do and you compare where you are to where they are, and it just doesn't work that way. It's just a really good way to bum yourself out. But it didn't feel right. For me. And when I was in college, I would make costumes and crazy outfits to go to theme parties and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to try working as a costumer. And I did some indie movies doing costume and art department. And that just didn't feel right either. That was just, at the time, just not the right place for me creatively. I wasn't doing anything for fun or fulfillment anymore. It was just kind of, I have to make this shirt. I have to make this shirt with a 70s collar.
So, the theme, I guess, is, you kind of tell yourself that you want to, do something and then just try it out until you fail. Or not till you fail, or until, the enthusiasm fails, I should say.
Yeah, basically, my whole creative career is a series of whims and tests. So It's just like, oh, I want to do this thing. I'm going to go do this thing. And then, oh, no, I don't want to do that thing. That thing sucks.
Right.
Or, yay, that thing's fun. And then eventually the patina wears off and you're just like, maybe not. Maybe not anymore. So when I was working on some films, I decided I would pick up some money as doing retail. So I worked at Virgin Megastore in Chicago, just doing their fashion department, kind of folding clothes and putting tags on stuff and arranging it. And whenever I would just get kind of sick of being around people, which is quite often, I would sneak into the windows and make crazy window displays. So one time we had this whole British invasion island in the store, as we call islands. So it was all merchandise from like Heinz bean tins and like t-shirts from Ben Sherman, things like that. And I took all of that and made a big British flag in the window and made a mannequin all mod styled. That actually turned into a job with the company as a visual merchandising contractor. So I would go to all the stores and do this. So it was something I did just because it was productive. It would help the company, but I just could not be with people anymore.
I love it.
So once that kind of road meandered to its end as the stores began to close, as people stopped buying CDs and things like that, I was at a art and antique fair with my friend Max Bear, who you actually had on not long
Yay,
ago.
Max!
Yay, Max! Woo! We were walking around. We went to this area that had all these antique Japanese fan pieces. They were 3D fans that were like wall mounted, but made in kind of a plush way. So it, all the pieces were risen slightly. And I immediately got an idea, as Max and I joke back and forth, that I should make stretched taxidermy in the same way. So we actually did a couple collaborations where he would make a painting of, say, like one of his characters wearing a creature, and then I would make the stretched version of that creature. So it was just like a pathetic, like this cartoony girl must have slaughtered this mythical creature to wear, and then here he is. And then I also decided I wanted to make these giant wall-hanging octopus pieces, so I made this big pink octopus mounted to the wall. His name is Bubblegum. There was a store here, like a gallery / designer toy store, which was kind of the first introduction I had to designer toys. I was like, oh, this is this crazy thing. Maybe they'd be interested in showing my work. And they put it up in the store, and it sold right away. And I was like, whoa, this is a thing.
This is an actual thing.
This is a thing I can do. I've done something. And it was perfect, for me. It blends illustration with the costume design, like the sewing, the tactile part with the crazy things in my head. And so I just started making all these anthropomorphic animals wearing crazy clothes and all these monsters with, I take a play on words and kind of try to make something funny with it, like a creature. And they actually gave me my first solo show. It was A-OK Gallery here in Chicago. It was super great. It was just like, oh, I could make... This is like a gallery career. There's such a thing as gallery art.
There is such a thing.
I'm going to do this now. I started pairing up with other artists to do collaborations like I did with Max, creating their characters in 3 dimensions and in fabric. I started getting more and more into the designer toy scene, working more with those artists. And that's actually how I got 2 designer toy awards, is pairing up with an artist, Gary Ham, who I cornered at a designer toy ceremony. And I said, we need to make toys of this thing you made, and I love it. And, oh yeah, here, I'm Lana. And he's like, okay, scary lady.
Security.
Yeah. I'm trapped in this banquette. So, I mean, it just worked out that way. I was just kind of getting more and more into making plush editions, and I still do today, because I need that part of my life still. But then I was on a panel at the New York Comic Con about designer toys. I was, the token plush person. And someone asked if you could make anything, what would you want to make? And I just went, I want to make realistic life-size skeletons out of fabric. And then I was like, hey, I should do that. I should make fabric skeletons for a living.
Oh, I love it. So it's just like everything you do is like just words that you see coming out of your mouth, and then you're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. I'm committed.
Yeah, that's kind of the way my career choices go. It's just like I say something and I'm like, hey, that was a good idea I had. Mm. Like my brain and my mouth are two different things.
Right.
They operate on two different levels. So then I just started making fabric skeletons, and it actually, I get more and more into it, more detailed. That's my goth side, my broody goth side. And then the plush toys is like the fun, whimsical one. So I've got like the two aspects of my current career, which fulfill two different niches in my life that I need. Sometimes I don't want to, I'm going to look at skeletons.
Right.
Give me your bones, sir. and then other times I just want to be like, wee, color.
Right.
So goofy monster. Yep.
Do you ever like struggle with like, I think a lot of people might struggle from this, the idea that, you kind of define yourself by a certain style or genre or whatever, like, you're the felt fabric skeleton girl, like, so then do you ever like struggle with that identity and like to create the plush toys?
Well, I mean, it's, some people will know me by maybe one or the other, and other people will know me by both kind of sides of the personality. I did struggle with it more when I was trying to be an illustrator, because they try to teach you to, you have to develop your one style. This is the style people will give you work by. But that never worked for me. I needed to have an outlet for multiple styles. So if I was doing this like watercolor of a cemetery, I needed to be able to like do this fun poppy colored like octopus painting. Also, it's just, I needed to have two tracks that I could go on. So one day when I don't feel creative in one aspect, I can go to the other. But the plush I kind of try to inject the artist I'm working with style into as well. So it's more of a collaboration thing. So I don't have to, I must make this super cute thing that is totally mine today. Mm. I feel more creative liberties with the skeletons, even though, I didn't create skeletons. Like, I'm looking at a skeleton to find the shapes. Like, I'm not creating the shapes in my head. Whereas the plush is more kind of, I can do anything, because there's nothing in the world that is this thing. So. Right.
And you mentioned the idea of kind of whim-based ideas, which I love. And I think that some people, myself included, struggle with that. Like, I get an idea and then it stews in my brain for months or years before I kind of build up the courage to do it. And this podcast is actually one of the first times I actually got the idea and just went for it, just picked up the microphone and just started talking. So do you have any advice for people who struggle with that kind of incubation period with an idea, that they let it stew for too long and kind of let all the doubts and all the fears kind of creep in and take over?
Well, the stewing won't necessarily help anything, because just jumping in and just doing something, there's no harm. No harm will befall you to just jump in and try something. And then if it doesn't work out, you've learned some sort of series of lessons as to why maybe it didn't work out, or if it didn't fulfill, if you sit there and think about it, your brain will think of all reasons not to do something. And then, it just becomes a series of laziness. Like, oh, well, I can't do that now because of this one thing. But, there's nothing to gain if you don't try, and everything to gain if you do. So it's been helpful for me in all my random career choices to just be like, I want to try that. and then just try it. Because I tried things that didn't work. The illustration, the costume design, and then sometimes feeling mediocre in a lot of disciplines. Mm-hmm. I mixed them all together and now feel like I have a solid talent and drive for this new career I made myself. So, you just kind of have to see where it takes you. You just can't pretend that the idea never crossed your mind and that it won't ever become anything.
Right. And also that idea of, you can create opportunities for yourself that you don't know exist, or that you don't realize that they're actually opportunities, like, creating the window display, like that turning into an actual job,
Yeah, that was just me trying to avoid human contact.
Right.
And then it turned into an actual, like, well-paying career for a few years. Like, that's what I was like, this is what I do now. So every couple of years I have a this is what I do now moment.
Right.
Recently I was thinking like, oh, I should get into ornithology. And I was like, wait, well, I'd have to go back to school for biology and all this, And I'm like, maybe I'll just study bones on my free time.
Right.
So that is not the career leap I'm taking right now.
Right. I love it. Well, clearly, starting something is not a fear that you have, but do you have any other kind of fears or resistances when it comes to getting work done?
Well, actually, I'm just coming out of 2 back-to-back, I call them beast weeks. So
Beast week.
Where I try horribly to give myself these ridiculous deadlines, and then I don't make it, and then I burn myself out. So basically, I'm terrible to myself, is what I'm saying. Let me list all the ways I'm terrible to myself. So besides burnout and trying to gain momentum again and trying to just get started, like, sometimes that takes quite a bit of push. No, waha! I have to creatively push myself down the stairs sometimes. Creative stairs. I really have a fear of not being good enough at what I'm doing, and there's no rules in fabric skeletons, so I don't know why I've imposed a bunch of rules about how I need to make things and why they all need to be perfect all the time. But I am really terribly hard on myself when it comes to the quality of my work and what I fear other people see in it. So, like, for instance, I'm working on a piece right now that's a human jawbone, and I'm just like, well, it wouldn't be puffy in this area, this one tiny area that nobody will ever look at.
Right.
But I must rip this thing up and start again. So I have to resist the urges to destroy my work a lot of the time. So my husband will actually wander in while I'm working, and I'll either, be laying on the floor, defeated, or my head in my hands, and maybe shedding some tears, or on the ground on my knees with my hands in the air, just screaming, why? and then he'll, like, slowly back out of the room. Or he'll be like, oh, that's great. And I'll be like, get out of here! You know nothing about my art! And he'll come back a little bit later after he's given me time to work through whatever I was trying to work through, and I'll just be like, I just don't care anymore. I have to get this done. And he'll be like, yay! You've made it through the other side.
Yeah.
I struggle pretty much with every piece I make, just because not what's in my head. But then sometimes, it has to go through the ugly stage first before it will become what is in the head. But when you get stuck at the ugly stage, sometimes it's best just to have a timeout with your art, maybe a little restraining order, where I banish the piece to the closet for a little while so I can work on other pieces without it looking at me with judgment.
Literally.
Why aren't you working on me?
Yeah.
I told you we needed to take some time out. Our relationship's just not working.
Right.
So having a lot of things to work on at one time is good for my morale.
Right.
I get to banish pieces to the closet until I can have a strong enough will to see them again. And then I'll sometimes pull it out and be like, oh, this is pretty great. I wonder how I did this.
Right, yeah. I get that too. When you're too close to like a project and you're spending way too much time on it, it's just like you can't see it for what it for the whole. You know, you're looking at all those individual little mistakes or blemishes or just things that you couldn't quite perfect, and then when you can kind of take that time away from it and then reread it or re-listen to it or re-look at it, everything changes and you can see it for like the whole and realize that those little things like only your eyeballs can see it almost. Right,
they're little blemishes that look like they're on purpose. You're like, that one stitch is slightly out of place on the inside of this that nobody will ever see. Why did I do that? That's terrible. But, there's a time to learn from the piece if it's just not going the right direction. Like, if you just keep working on it and it just keeps fighting back, then maybe it needs to be approached in a slightly different way. So I'm saying that while holding this piece I'm working on currently, looking at all the tiny stitches that are slightly askew.
Put it away.
I'm just screaming in my head. The flames on the sides of my face. So, I actually have a box in my closet called the Box of Sadness, labeled as such.
Oh.
It's where all the failed skulls, or basically the first one I've done, the prototype, goes to die or be forever entombed. So it's just a pile of wonky and derp. It's a dirt box. But they just can't be saved, but I can't throw them away.
That sounds terrifying, like a horror movie.
Yep.
Like they're going to come out at night and get you. Why did you abandon us?
They learned how to hold a knife between them. Nowhere is safe.
Oh.
Yeah. Basically, my whole studio is a horror movie.
Well, I like that though. I think everybody should have like a box of sadness, like the idea of a trial. That's a time where you actually tried, and it didn't work, but you got to like have all those rejections and kind of like build it up, and you want your box of sadness to be sadder and sadder because that's more opportunities for like the box of happiness.
Well, actually, it's funny because I have in the studio or in the closet, I have the box of sadness and the box of happiness.
Yay!
But the box of happiness is a little box where when something good happens, like career-wise or whatever, I write it down on a piece of paper and put it in the box of happiness. Because some days I get super bummed and I just want to become a barista and forget about art. And then I will open the box and be like, all right, I did some stuff. And that I'll turn around and look at my designer toy awards too, and I'll just be like, okay, I made something cool once or twice. I can do it again, I guess. I guess I'll just have to pick myself up and keep going. So the box of sadness is to learn from the previous mistakes, and the box of happiness is to keep me from just giving up completely some days. So, it's good to have random boxes of feelings squirreled away in your home.
All the feels.
All the feels. I don't have that box yet. The box of tears.
Oh, no.
It's just a jar filled with liquid, salty liquid. Just sprinkle my tears on all the art.
Oh, no.
A piece of me is with you.
Well, let's talk about Beast Week, because I think that's like a really good idea for people, like kind of akin to like a 30-day challenge or piling up way too many like goals, you know what I mean? Because people need those goals to kind of get it done. So just like totally overwhelming yourself. So that's like literally what you do. You're just like, let's make the most impossible like array of goals.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much every week. What I do at the beginning of the year is I have this extremely elaborate way of keeping track of all the things I want to do and have to do. I have a bunch of pieces of paper that are all color coordinated. So one will be like all the collaborations and stuff I want to do or have to do, all the deadlines for shows and things like that, personal projects, social obligations, human contact calendar, and then basically like other things like my Patreon, things I want to do for that, and things I want to do to keep myself healthy. And every month I take a bunch of things from each list and put it into a calendar that's basically a big post-it board where it just has a bunch of post-its on it. So all the days are, squared like regular calendar. But on this one, it's a paper calendar, so I can ball it up at the end and like scream hallelujah or hopefully not peel off each post-it I did not complete and move it to the next month in defeat. Womp womp. So these past 2 weeks, because I'm getting ready for a solo show in July, I have every piece kind of detailed out, like how much time I think it should take. So at the end of last month, I was like, okay, I have to get all the stuff that isn't my solo show done. I need to clear this board because I can't be thinking about other stuff anymore. Like, I've been working on everything here and there, but now I need to actually focus because now it's getting crunch time. So I'm like, I'm going to do 12 projects in 7 days. And then, it becomes, I'm going to do 6 projects in 2 days because everything took twice as long as I thought. So then I just stay up later and later as the week progressed just because I'm like, I got to finish this. And then, unfortunately, when you work that way, it does lend itself to burnout pretty quickly because you're just like, I just need a day off. I need to stare into the sun and like do nothing.
Staring into the sun.
You just need to stare into the sun. No eye protection. Just staring into the sun. Wondering where I went wrong with my life choices. So last week, or the end of the week before, I actually had equipment failure, so then everything I needed to get done, quote, in my head to get done, I couldn't. So then I was just like, oh my god, I'm a failure! And then I was just like, wait, no, these are self-imposed deadlines. I was trying to trick myself.
And it worked for a second.
It did. Sometimes it usually doesn't, because I look at the calendar and I'm like, ha, yeah, right, boss. I work for myself. There's no way these are due. But, trying to trick myself sometimes with crazy deadlines works to build up the momentum. Because if I work on a show maybe for like 4 months straight, kind of nonstop, really late nights, then once it's over, I still have residual momentum even though I need time off. So I have to keep that momentum going, otherwise I'll lose ground quickly in the creative restart. So, if I just keep working and working and working, then I'll want to keep working, because I really enjoy not working also. And when you really enjoy not working on stuff and playing video games and kind of, napping, then that momentum takes over the creative one. So it's all a balance, which nobody is 100% great at, no matter what their Instagram says.
Right.
Instagram is just a house of lies. So, then when you have to work through burnout. So this whole week, I have 3 projects left over from the previous 2 weeks, which now I'm like, I must get these done or else failure for an actual deadline that's happening. So that's when I'll have to just, I don't care anymore. I have to just make this. You just have to work. There's no back and forth with my brain anymore. It just has to get done. And that's usually when the tears start, is when you push yourself so close to the deadline and now you feel like you're not making the piece as it would naturally want to be made.
But you're still armed with the ability to get it done, though, because it has to get done.
Yeah, well, at some point you just have to, like, it's done. Mm-hmm. You are done, you're leaving my house. And then once, you've resigned the piece to its fate, then you can start seeing good in it, is what I seem to have. These are all basically my children, but they're just jerks to me. Like, I love being able to create these pieces, but they give me such hell that, I get really emotionally attached, either good or bad, to pieces.
Right.
So, like, if I can look back at it and be like, oh, you look great. Like, or if I look back at it like, oh, I can still see everything I did wrong with you. We're going to have a talking. It just kind of has to happen at some point where you just have to get it done. And it's not that the standards dip. It's just you need to know when you need to actually shower, eat, and sleep again. True. Because those are the things that go. You become a feral kind of mole person, especially if you work from home, which I do. Crazy cat, feral mole person is what happens to me.
Hey, we all have that inside of us a little bit.
So, this whole week, I felt really burnt out. And yesterday, I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the library and research stuff for my solo show. So I spent 3 hours at the library looking up Victorian practices and things, because I'm doing my whole solo show based on Victorian jewelry and mourning and things like that. It actually helped because now I want to get all these pieces done out of the way so I can get back to the pieces I was making for the show. So I sometimes just have to take time for inspiration and get out of the house, put on some deodorant, put pants on, and get out of the house and just kind of take in things that are outside of myself.
Right, especially when you start to become feral cat lady, like, it's important because you can get way too, like you can get cabin fever if you're just kind of working on, and not just like being inside and being alone, working on your stuff. It's just like being, like we were saying before, being with that one project or that one series of projects over and over and over again, and not kind of mixing it up into like a different genre like you do, like, having the happy days or the happy like plush toys, and then like the scary skeletons. It's like you need to mix it up a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with going outside or kind of moving towards a different project as well.
Yeah, exactly. And my studio is a total mirror of my current mania. So if I have a lot of projects that have really close deadlines, my studio just becomes an avalanche of things, and I just like, oh, I can't see outside, the walls are closing in. Everything's a mess because I usually, if I have lax deadlines, I make a piece, I clean up after the piece is done, reset everything. But then at some points I just have to work on 4 things at once. So a table is just covered, like it's an episode of Hoarders, comes into my studio. So that's even more time where I need to be like, okay, I need to get out of here. Mm-hmm. So it's helpful. The skeletal pieces are actually make me feel more smart because I use the sciencey part of my brain to study actual specimens, and I go to museum collections and, spend maybe an 8-hour day looking at the genus and species of some creature I wanted to make, and then figuring out all of its bone construction. And that part of my brain really needs to get out of the house sometimes. It's like, it's all well and good with books, but sometimes you need to just like, I'm going to go where the scientists are. And, the plush pieces are basically like, I'm going to watch cartoons and eat ice cream. Right. And make this satyr with these crazy rainbow antlers. Like, so, it's my scientific brain and my crazy brain, have to sometimes have their own field trips.
It's time to go out.
Time to go outside, kids.
Yeah.
Let's go look at skeletons.
I love it.
Yeah, so, like, actually, the days I get to go out to the collections are one of my favorites, because I really do feel like, this is very fulfilling, and it's brain food, and I'm learning something. And actually, one time at collections, I found the lower jawbone of a bird kind of in a box, and it just said unknown specimen, because they didn't know which skull it went to. And then I was looking at lapwing skulls, and I was like, wait, this is the bottom jaw for this lapwing skull. And then I brought it to the scientists that work there, and they're like, oh, that's awesome, you found it. I was like, yes, science wins!
Real Sherlock Holmes there.
I love that so much. So I just love solving bone-related mysteries. How did he die? Well, let's see.
That's awesome. I don't know if people are aware of this, but museums of natural history actually have just cabinets and drawers full of like bones of like every creature that's ever lived, right? Or every creature that they found, right?
Oh, well, it's all Raiders of the Lost Ark in there. If you ever wanted to pretend to be Indiana Jones, which I always did growing up, make contact at a local museum and ask if you can see or work with specimens or use their collections for study, because it is bananas. It's just miles and miles of cabinets, and if it wasn't for their insane amount of cataloging, I don't think they'd know who's buried down there. Like, one intern goes missing. Oh, he's with collections now.
So, do you have to get special permission, or is it just as easy as asking?
Well, so when I do some work for the Nature Museum, which is the Peggy Notebart in Chicago, and they have a small collections off-site, and when I was working on a project building them a giant forest out of fabric, they were bringing in some extinct birds, and I was like, you there! You with the dead bird! You seem to be my sort of people. Is there any way that anybody could come look at what you have in the back? They're like, oh yeah, sure, just email and we'll set up a time. So the first time I went, I gave them a list of specimens, and they pulled them for me and brought them into a room and like gave me gloves, and they're like, okay, you are now being watched with these animals, because you let anybody in, right. Who knows what'll happen.
Jaws will go missing.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what happened to that lapwing. It's a mystery. But I've been going for a few years now, so now they just kind of open the doors to collections, and they're like, okay, here's the entomology, here's the botany, here's the mammals, where the birds are, here are the mounts, here are the skins. Just put everything back when you're done. Here's a pair of gloves. We'll come up and see if you're still alive. If not, mothballs. Mothballs for you. So I spend quite a lot of time there. Like, they're super, super easy to, like, view their whole collections. So there was a couple species I wanted to draw, and they have a very limited collection, and it's usually local species, because it's a local nature museum. So I have a friend who works at the Field Museum, and I emailed him and asked him how I would be able to come in to draw stuff. Normally, what you could do is email the main contact at the museum. There's usually, at the Field Museum on their website, they have a couple people that field certain kinds of questions. So I emailed a guy, but I had an inside man this time. So he got me in touch with his friend who is the bird man at the Field Museum, because I specifically wanted to look at some bird skulls. And he said, sure, come on by. And I spent 8 hours in the labyrinth that is the back rooms. And I was only in where the bird skeletons are, not unmounted skeletons. So it's just tiny boxes filled with birds, drawers and drawers and cabinets filled with skeletons. And it's up in an atrium, and you have to zigzag all through all these different collections and through like where the flesh-eating beetles live, and it's basically Temple of Doom. Gotta maneuver through. The rock is going to fall at any time to get you out of the museum. So we climb up these steps, and it's dark up there. And he's like, "Oh, well, just if you need lights, you can just turn on any of these." So I have this one light over where I'm working, and I'm just like, "Oh, this is so cool! I feel like I'm unearthing mysteries." Mm-hmm. So I'll go and I'll take a lot of pictures of specimens and then draw them as I see them, and then break them out into flat patterning. So I'll see all the shapes I can try to make into fabrics. So what I would have to do is build it inside out and backwards, basically. So I'll have to figure out how many parts I'll need, where they'll need to be attached, and all that. So I'll take a couple specimens and do that with, and then I'll go bananas and get a bunch of other specimens and photograph them from a bunch of angles so that I have reference if I say need to make a puffin and I didn't draw it out while I was there. Then I can go back and try to make the patterns from that. And then if it doesn't work out, like I missed something because I'm only using flat photography, I can go back and I write down the specimen, what drawer it was in, what cabinet it was in, and then I can go back and find the exact one with the catalog number and be like, oh, okay, I was missing this one bone, this one tiny bone that I couldn't see because of the camera.
Gotcha.
So it's really great to go there, and I'm so happy that they let me in for hours at a time, and then just kind of leave me, and then come back later and go, hey, how you doing? Are you tired? Are you hungry? And I'm like, I'm so hungry. I need to leave. I'll be back. But all of the cabinets are all separated by genus and species, so you have to know what you're going in looking for. Otherwise, I don't know what this is. I'm going to draw it.
Right.
So
when you said you go out to get social interaction, I don't think that's the way to do it, by sitting alone in a museum in the dark.
What?
Staring at bones.
But there was a person. Yeah, actually, maybe you have something there. Yeah, on the days I become quite feral, that is a good, segue to, hey, come have a beer with me. Right. Because even though I'm the friends I go out and drink with, or go out to dinner with, or hang out with, they've known me for a very long time, and still I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna be so awkward. Everything I say is weird. They must be looking at me like I'm crazy. But, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
I become a mountain man or mountain woman.
Well, I appreciate your daily dose of social interaction with me today, for coming on the show.
Well, you're doing me a service, really. You're keeping me out of the crazy house.
Well, you're welcome, Lana.
Thank you.
I'm here anytime.
Okay, great. Don't say that, or you're going to get another call.
Hey, it's fine. Next time I'm on Skype, just hit me.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Before we let you go, though, it's time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach to the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
Okay, well, one thing I've learned is if you're waiting for someone to hand you an opportunity, you will be waiting a very long time. So it's best to just kind of jump in. Luck won't get you anywhere. So even if you're working full-time and someone says you're super lucky, it's not that you're lucky, it's that you had to put in quite a bit of work. And sometimes that amount of work can be really daunting, but all you need to do is set small goals to accomplish, to clear the board with eventually. So even if you just have to get in the shallow end of your goals and then kind of wade slowly to the deep end where all the scary stuff is, it'll be worth it. And then if you get to the deep end and you're just like, oh no, this isn't for me. And then you have to paddle your way back. You can get out of the pool at any time.
I forgot my floaties.
My floats.
Awesome.
I want to go sit in the hot tub for a while instead. There's nothing that has to keep you on one track or in one pool or in one box. So you can kind of test out a bunch of water. see what feels nice.
Right.
And then make steps in order to get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. I love that idea. Yeah. No, it doesn't matter if you go in the deep end or the shallow end. I think that's like a debate that I've been trying to figure out because, some people do say, just jump right in and other people say, take it easy, take baby steps. And it's a tough thing to figure out to advise people, you know what I mean? As like a creative podcast. But
well, I jump in head first.
Yeah.
Sometimes into the shallow end. So if you need to be more cautious, you're more than welcome to, you take, everybody's different. So you got to just take at your own pace, but making excuses not to do it or waiting for someone to do it for you is not going to get you anywhere. So you kind of just have to
get wet.
Preach. I mean, even if you need to take up some things that you never thought you should try, like if you wanted to take woodworking or if you wanted to learn how to, I don't know, become a mime or you could take steps to do something completely outside of yourself too, that will enrich what you want to do. So like I signed up for a broadsword class, and I'm sure that'll help me hack through deadlines. Womp womp. So, I mean, it's going to be real helpful in day-to-day life, but it'll probably help with stress. So, if you have to kind of distract yourself a little bit here and there, I mean, there's no harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Lana, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Thanks for having me and bringing me back to humans.
You're welcome. You can find Lana on her website, which is lanacrooks.com. That's LANACROOKS.com. On Instagram, she is Lana Crooks, as well as Patreon. We'll have links to everything we talked about today at yourcreativepush.com/Lana Crooks. Lana, thanks again.
Thank you.
Oh, I had so much fun talking with Lana. I love her spirit and that idea of whim-based ideas and her whim-based approach to creativity. It's totally fine to say your weird ideas out loud and then begin doing them and then see if they pan out. And if they don't, that's fine because you never know what it will lead to. So stop with all that planning. All it's going to do is slow you down and give you kind of more resistances, more excuses to not do the thing. Just say it out loud and start it. And I also love that idea of not typecasting yourself to one path that you've already kind of started to go down. Like, sure, you might make cute plush toys, but what about that dark side, that other kind of creative voice that you need to get out there? Don't be afraid to let that out too. And don't hold yourself back because you've already kind of come out with a different style or voice or perhaps even built an audience based on that. Don't be afraid to explore new things and to go down a second path. And that also really relates to the idea that Lana was talking about, being, quote, mediocre at a bunch of different disciplines and then becoming really good at this new thing that you've created as like a amalgamation of all the different knowledge and experience that you've gained from doing all of those things. You never know exactly what that, quote, final thing will become if you don't jump in and start messing around and experimenting. Even if that is just to find your style, it all comes from experience. So damn it, give yourself some experience. And you might not jump into the deep end, but go into the shallow end if you have to eventually get to that deep end. So my thanks again to Lana. If you wanted more of this conversation, we're going to have bonus content on the Patreon page. So for all my Patreon supporters, look for that this weekend. Lana shares one of her worst creative moments, as well as just this goofy conversation that we had about doing interviews and making notes. So that is for you this weekend, but that is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done. On Monday's show, we have Shane Madden. Shane is a very talented illustrator and also the founder of Illustration Lighthouse, and I had a really fun time talking with him. You can find him at shanemadden.com or illustrationlighthouse.com, or you can find those links at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/216, as well as everything else that we talked about today. But go get some amazing work done this weekend. I love you all, and we will see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.